If you're like most people who are in the Instagram game, you're probably frustrated with the editing process. It can be overwhelming and it often takes way longer than it should. In fact, 95% of people take way longer for editing than they have to. But what if I told you there was a way to upgrade your level and speed in editing pictures? With our one-click retouch brushes, you can get high-end results in a fraction of the time. My name is Tamara Williams and I am an international photographer specializing in beauty photography. Let me walk you through how easy it is to use the Williams Academy Photoshop brushes. Let's dive right in. After you have downloaded either the brush bundle or one of the brush sets, you will find these folders in your download session with a detailed how to use them PDF. What you want to do next is mark all of them, right-click and open them in Photoshop or double-click. This will take a few sections, but it will open the files automatically for you in your brush sections, all sorted in folders. If you are using the skin actions, make sure to download and open both files. We'll talk about how to use them later. Now, let's start with our bestseller, the Eyelash Williams Photoshop brushes. Let's see how easy we can polish this image with only one click. As you can see, the lashes are basically non-existent or have been edited out in the cleaning process because they were just too clumpy or didn't have a nice bend. To start, we use the Alt button and click on the existing lashes in the darker areas to pull the source color from there. Next, we go to the Photoshop brush section. Let's look for the lashes folder. As we are working on the right eye, we will pick any of the lashes that are labeled with AR at the end of the file name. As you can see here, we click on a lash labeled with an L at the end, and it's not suiting the right eye because it's supposed to go on the left eye. That's why it's labeled L. The process of picking the style in lashes is solely dependent on your aesthetics, and with over 96 options, you'll sure find the right style for your occasion. Make sure that your brush is set to an opacity of 100%. The only thing you'll now have to do is adapt the brush size and then click. This will already leave you at a decent outcome. However, if you want to polish the result even further, you can select the lashes with a lasso tool, right-click the area, click Free Transform and then click on the Warp tool to transform it until you're satisfied with the outcome. To make the result even more realistic looking, you can click the Blur tool and go over the whole lashes and then reduce the opacity of the last step by going to Edit and clicking the Fade Blur tool. Again, this step is not necessary and only shows one of so many ways on how to use the Williams lash brushes. This is up to your liking. There's no right or wrong way on how to use the brushes. Let your creativity flow. We'll repeat the same exact process to the left eye by choosing the same lash style, now labeled L, and then click. Lasso tool, Free Transform, Warp tool, and adapt it until we reach our desired outcome and are happy with how the lashes are looking on our model. Use the Blur tool. Turn down the opacity of the Blur tool. And this is how easy it was to transform the lashes of this picture. Let's create another layer for the iris. Again, there are many ways to do it. You can do it the way we are showcasing it here, but you could also use a curve and adapt the brightness and do the exact same thing and play around with the blending modes. To keep it easy and simple, we'll look for the iris structure of our desire. We will adapt it to our iris size and we will use the color white. And again, just click. Sometimes it's not the right fit. You could either erase the overlined areas or, as in our case, just look for a more suiting structure or shape. There are 42 options and then click again. Change the blending mode to overlay and reduce the opacity to your liking. We'll repeat the same step on the left eye. Always make sure Always make sure to look for the left or the right label. If you feel like adapting the structure, use the lasso tool to mark the desired area. Right-click and use the free transform tool. To add a bit more depth, use the eraser tool and follow the upper lash line with a soft brush. And this is how easy it is to add an amazing looking structure to the iris by using the high quality Williams brushes. Pretty decent upgrade already, huh? Now let's continue with the eyebrows. Don't forget to make a new layer for each element that you're adding. The eyebrow brushes are being used in the same way that the lash brushes are being used. We'll pick a source color from the existing eyebrows by pressing Alt and pulling a source color from the darker areas. Then you proceed on to look for a style of your desire. Make sure to look for the ones labeled R or right when working on the right eyebrow, and looking at the ones labeled L or left when working on the left eyebrow. There are over 42 different brushes to work with, so we're sure you will find a style that fits your needs. After you've chosen your style, you simply adapt size and then click. Use the lasso tool to mark the area you want to work with, right-click, free transform to adapt it, and then use the warp tool to adjust the eyebrow shape to your liking. As the eyebrows looked a bit too undefined, we duplicate the layer and merge it down to one. You could also just double click the brush instead. It will have the same effect. If you now want to, you can adapt the opacity of the layer to your liking. And that is how easy it is to fill in eyebrows in a natural looking way. We'll repeat the same process on her left eyebrow. Click, mark, use the free lasso tool, right-click, free transform, adapt the size of the eyebrows so that they will fit the picture, use the warp tool to make it look suiting, and then just get rid of the areas of the brush that you don't need by marking it with the lasso tool and deleting it. If you still feel like fine-tuning the eyebrows, you can then continue with an eraser set on a low opacity and flow level, and then draw over the areas that are still distracting you. You can also do that with a mask instead. Again, no wrong or right way to use these tools. To polish the results even further, you can again go to Filter, Sharpen, Sharpen. This will add more definition to the brows. And this is how easy it is to transform lashes, eyebrows, and eyes with only one click and only in a few minutes. I hope you enjoyed. Let's move on to the Freckles brush set. As always, we create a new layer, put our opacity level and flow level to 100%, and use the color black. We then go to the brushes and are looking for the Freckle folder, just to see which brush is gonna fit our needs the best. And then just click. Go to the blending mode and change it to overlay or soft. Adapt the opacity if needed. To get a natural looking result, you want to do more individual layers and use different brushes. There are 25 different styles available. Just use any of them and randomly paint over the face of the model. Adapt the brush size and put the freckles in random places. You can also tilt the brush if you want to. Keep the blending mode set to soft light and adapt the opacity to your desire. You can always go in on the layers with an eraser tool and get rid of them in the areas where you don't like them, or you do a mask and just get rid of the freckles that are distracting your vision with a low opacity and flow. This time we are putting the freckles all in one folder and then put a mask on it so we can also show you how you can mask them. Use a black brush set to a mid-range opacity and flow and just paint over the areas where you either completely want to get rid of the freckles or where you just want to soften them. Again, this step is solely up to your own vision and liking. If you feel like you're lacking a few more freckles, just use another freckle brush, make another layer, paint on it, and repeat the same step that we just did. And this is how you easily create realistic looking freckles. Let's continue with the Catchlight brushes. This model already has decent catchlights in her eyes, but we can still make it much more pop. For that purpose, again, we create a new layer and then go to the brushes and look for the Catchlight folder. In there, you will find 32 different light reflections to play around with, all of them in high-end quality. Using the color white on a 100% opacity and flow, we then will proceed to browse through the reflections to find the perfect match. In this case, you can go with the right or left labels, but you don't have to, as obviously this refers to where the light source is coming from and not the eye. Again, you can use them to your liking, but the ideal way would be to use one brush for both eyes, depending on where you want your light source reflection to come from. Once you've decided for a reflection, adapt its size and click to both eyes. Then you proceed to use the lasso tool. Mark the area that you want to transform, right-click, and then transform or warp it to your liking. And do it to the other side too if you feel like you want to adapt the reflection. You can then go ahead and play around with the blending modes in between overlay, soft light, and lighten. Personally, I like to keep the blending mode at normal and just lower the opacity until I think it looks realistic. And that is how easy it is to make your model's eyes pop like diamonds with the Williams Catchlight brushes. Another thing I love to play around with, just because it can be a lot of fun and add that little extra spice to an image, are the eyeliner brushes. You can quite literally use these brushes in any color that you could think of. Because I wanted to make this one not as harsh with a boring black liner, I chose a matcha brown for this look. Opacity and flow as always set to 100. We do make a new layer again, blending mode of the layer set to normal. Go to the brush folder, choose the eyeliner style of our desire, adapt the brush size roughly in size, and click. We repeat the same process for the other eye too. Then we use the lasso tool and mark the brush that we want to adapt. Right click, free transform, warp it. To get a better understanding if you did adapt the liner correctly, You can also lower the opacity of the layer to see if the liner is on the upper lash line and therefore placed accordingly. And then repeat the same exact step on the left eye to make the eyeliners match. You want to make sure to always zoom in and out of the picture and adapt the brush accordingly so that they match. For this, you can also select the area and then liquefy the liner. If it's, for example, too thick for your liking in a few areas, or if you still want to fine-tune it. Don't forget to repeat the exact same process on both eyes. Next step is going over the liner with the blur tool so it will look more realistic, and then adapting it even further and further in warping it so we really end up with a realistic looking result. Let's adapt the gray and black values of the eyeliner layer. To do that, just right click on the layer where the brushes are painted on and drag the shown bar on the left side by pressing Alt or Option and dragging the right one of the two pins more towards the middle. These factors really rely on your starting point image, but if you play around with these controllers, I promise you'll understand the concept behind it very quickly and will be able to use it to your advantage. Next, we'll copy the layer and turn its blending mode to color. Again, no right or wrong way to go about this. This is just one of the endless ways to use the brushes. To smoothen out the edges a bit more, you can now take a smaller round brush and fill the gaps that are still there with a lower opacity and flow brush. Next, we'll use a curve adjustment layer and make a mask of the eyeliner brushes for it. You can easily do that by selecting the brushes only by pressing Command or Windows key and clicking on the layer. This will only select the brushes. Second, you simply click on the curve adjustment layer and the mask will already be done for you. The third step is now to adapt the curve to your desire. In our case, we wanted to darken the eyeliner a bit more to make it look more realistic. We then changed the blending mode to luminosity so the color won't be too saturated. The last step now was to adapt the other layers to our liking, lowering the opacity, getting back into the gray value controllers and just playing with them until they end up looking the most realistic. Once satisfied, I put all the layers in one folder. And that's how easy it is to add an eyeliner to your picture to spice it up. If you ever feel like you don't like the color you ended up with, there's an easy fix. Just double click on the layer and go to Color Overlay. Put the blending mode to normal and pick any color that you want. Of course, don't forget to adapt the gray and black values so that the black tones of the lashes will shine through for a natural looking result. Adding eye makeup has never been easier than with the Williams brushes. Now on to our one and only skin texture brushes. When you purchase the file, make sure to select both available files for download and also select both of the files to open them up in your Photoshop. The rest is easy. Go to your Action tab and pick any of the textures that you want to work with. But let's do it together on this image. Before starting out, you want to make sure to open your Action tab. Now there should be all the 9 different skin textures and one finish already open up for you. We want to add a bit more definition and texture to some areas that are lacking on our skin. For that reason, we will add on the hand and skin texture and press play. The only thing you'll now have to do is paint with a white brush on the black layer. To get the most natural looking result, you want to use a brush in a lower opacity and a low flow, as shown in the video, and paint over the areas where you want to add structure. If you feel like you want to adapt the texture and size, you can double click on the layer and go to the texture tab. There, you'll be able to adapt the size of the texture and play around with the depth of it, depending on your image and what you need. You can even further fine-tune it in bevel and emboss by adapting where the light source is coming from, getting rid of shadows, getting rid of highlights. So this tool is very, very powerful when you're really looking for that extra pinch of high-end texture details. To make the textures look more realistic, we'll lower the opacity of the layer and continue painting over the areas that lack in texture. Always make sure that you have the black mask selected and that you're drawing on it with a white low opacity brush. To get an amazing outcome, it's important that you build a base of texture and then layer other textures on top of it, because the human face has over 7 different types of skin textures, not one equal one. For that reason, we'll use another action and press play. Use a low opacity brush in white and start painting over the areas where we think skin texture is lacking. We'll basically just continue to build up the whole skin texture and adapt it in the layer settings if needed. We can, as mentioned earlier, also adapt where the light is coming from. But when doing that, you'll have to be very, very careful, as it does affect the whole area you were just drawing on. Adding all of your texture layers in one folder will make it easier for you to check the before and afters and see where you're going with the textures. It's also going to make it easier for you to mask out all the areas where you want to get rid of the texture. Once you're happy with the result, you can close the folder. Adding the finish to the action will make sure that you are really getting the best and most crisp look out of your image. And this is how easy it is to add skin texture to your pictures. I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth tutorial for the Williams brush bundle and the skin actions. If you want to shop them, make sure to click the link below this video.